Good day, viewers. Welcome to Balance, where weekly we talk about the importance of balancing our body, our mind, our spirit, and community. My name is John, and today my guest is Dr. Liz Ibanez. Welcome to Balance. Well, good afternoon, viewers. Welcome back to our balanced episodes. We are privileged today to have our counselor and psychologist on staff, Dr. Liz Ibanez, with us today, and we're going to talk about the topic of guilt. And the reason we're talking about that topic is in this series, New Year's Balance, we've touched on some things that might help you moving forward with your body and your spirit, massage therapy and writing. So Dr. Ibanez had sent me a suggestion about this topic, having a conversation about this topic. And I thought it was really meaningful and potentially helpful for us as we start in a new year. Because if any of us are dealing with some guilt, how do we address that? What is that all about? And could help us moving better into the year and work through that kind of stuff. So welcome, Dr. Liz. Thanks for tuning in with us today and helping us with this really important subject.
Thank you, Pastor John. And these videos have been great. And especially today's topic, we want to make sure that we have just enough, but not too much. Kind of like salts, right? We just need just enough, but not too much. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when we may all have different definitions of guilt. So let's just start sort of basic there. What is guilt? How do we define it?
Mm-hmm. Well, according to the dictionary definition, right, just look that up out of curiosity. So guilt is a feeling of having wronged someone, right, or having failed an obligation. It can also be defined as having committed an offense. Mm-hmm. And it's that internal feeling that we get that doesn't feel good. It's a feeling internally that we get when we have harmed someone, or maybe we think we've harmed someone or done harm. Mm-hmm. And all of us as kids, right, you would assume, right, we're taught to say, I'm sorry, right? That's something. So at a very early age, right, guilt is used ideally to help shape our behavior, to help us do what's morally correct. So guilt, though, in excess, right, can then start to have the opposite effect. Instead of it helping us to correct our behavior or to make amends or correct a wrong, which is what it's meant to do, right? That's why your parents teach you to say you're sorry, right? If you did something wrong, right? Take responsibility, apologize, right? Show regret. So that way, hopefully you learn and you don't keep doing that thing, all right? That's wrong. But if you start to feel guilty and when you haven't done anything wrong, then it can really start to work against you instead of for you.
So what are some signs that we can recognize and sort of be on the lookout for that guilt is getting in the way?
Sure. Right. Well, think about it too, Pastor John. Guilt, first we have to understand when and how we're feeling guilty, right? And so think about it both from a physical, an emotional, and spiritual level. So, right, we feel guilty, or how do we know even we feel guilty, right? Any negative emotion, it doesn't feel good to the body, right? So usually you might feel guilty because, your body doesn't feel good. You feel heavy, you feel down, you feel sick, right? You ever had that sensation, right? You did something wrong, you literally feel sick to your stomach, right? Yeah. Right? So that's a physical sign, right? The emotional signs would be, feeling sad, feeling sorrow. To the extreme, it could be feeling depressed. And many people don't know this, but excessive guilt is actually one of the symptoms that can be part of depression, right? That word excessive is really key. Mm-hmm. Another sign or way you're feeling guilty is your thought life, right? If you're constantly in your thought life, we all talk to ourselves, right? Don't find me one person that doesn't talk to themselves, okay? That would be, we'll have to do research on it. But we all talk to ourselves. So, signs that you're feeling guilty is in your self-talk, right? Oh, it's all my fault. I'm to blame. I shouldn't have, or I should, right? All that should talk. Yeah. I like to say, and for those who are believers, right? We believe there are definitely 10 right? I shoulds or
Yeah.
shouldn't, right? Those are the
Right.
10 Commandments, right? But signs can be when your chatter, is full of shoulds.
Heard a good definition, some ideas of how we recognize it. So, what are ways that we can address it?
Mm-hmm. Be really complicated as well, depending on what you define, and also what your culture, right? What your own moral compass defines as what is enough guilt, right? So first, keeping that in mind. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention another sign. Can we rewind for a second? I forgot to mention another sign of guilt is sleep trouble, right? When you're
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
tossing and turning too, right? And that's also a sign that, you're having trouble, right? Moving forward, or guilt might be getting to you too much or too heavy. So I want to make sure we didn't forget to mention that
Yeah.
sleep trouble,
That's
that tossing and turning. Uh-huh.
yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that because I feel like uh, different people respond, differently, of course, but that's probably
Mm-hmm.
one of mine. It's
Mm-hmm.
probably one of my signs. If all the self-talk is really going on like crazy and I can't
Mm-hmm.
sleep, that I should pay attention to that.
Yeah. And have you ever had also, what another sign or way of that guilt haunts you is you keep having the same conversation over and over again in your head? Like maybe you had a conversation with someone and it's that, would have, could have, should have, and you're just replaying that over and over in your head, right? Isn't that amazing how the brain, you can literally have the same conversation that you had with someone else and you're just replaying it and replaying it and
Oh, yeah.
replaying it. Right?
From like, 20 years ago, right?
It's so annoying, right? It's our blessing and our curse of our brain, right?
I think that would fit the definition of excessive, right?
Exactly, right? So, okay, so you had asked, well, okay, what do I do about this?
Hmm.
And what we're doing right now, being aware, right, of that concept that guilt is great. We need guilt, right? Guilt helps us be better people, right? Helps us have a moral society, right? But when it's too much, right, then it works against us. So, um, first, really checking in with yourself and reflecting on, okay, I'm feeling guilty. I'm noticing, let me think through this. Is guilt really applicable in this situation? Is it in proportion? And really important, are you taking on more responsibility, right, for whatever scenario happened, whether your thoughts of doing something you shouldn't have done, or maybe not doing something you think you should have done, but
Hmm.
really reflecting on what is your responsibility. Remember in school when we used to do those pie charts?
Yeah.
All right, remember the pie
Yes.
chart? So even doing a pie chart of, okay, how much proportion of the pie, or what piece of the pie really is mine, right? Versus how do I divide up this whole
Mhm.
responsibility, right, chart? Because sometimes when you're feeling excessive guilt, you really have just taken the whole pie, and that's probably not likely,
Right.
right? What do you think?
And it even could be the opposite. You're like, none of this is
Mm-hmm.
my problem. Like, maybe that's not true either.
Yes, exactly. So that's one thing, right? Thinking about it as a pie chart, right? And breaking it down. Also really checking in with yourself about if maybe, you're a helper and you're very compassionate, you always want to help people, right? As those in the helping professions do, right? But asking yourself if maybe you're saying too many yeses to things, right? Because of guilt, right? Oh, I don't want to feel bad. I feel guilty. And so checking in with yourself, maybe do we need to have some no's in there, or maybe no I can, or no not right now, because that often leads people to feelings of guilt or trying to avoid guilt. You take on way too much and then you end up feeling resentful about it, or angry, or irritable, or depressed. So really being selective about what you say yes to and what you say no to, and giving yourself permission that it's okay sometimes to say no.
Right.
God loves a joyful giver, and giving doesn't always mean financially, but even of your time.
Yeah.
So being aware if you're saying too many yeses, but then it's because you don't want to feel guilty about saying no.
Yeah.
Well, a really big thing, and especially with that idea of having balanced guilt, right, is understanding, okay, is this guilt motivating me? Is this guilt helping me be more productive? Is this guilt helping me make good decisions, right?
Yeah.
Or is this guilt now being detrimental? And one of the biggest ways you can know if you're feeling too much guilty or too much guilt is if you're not giving yourself time or permission to just relax.
Mhm.
Especially now our society is so based on production, right? Productivity. Every house has to look like HGTV, right? Everything has to be perfect, right? And so, you may be trying to read a book or just relaxing, right? Meditating, just sitting, having a cup of tea. And then your mind is like, oh, I should be cleaning. I should be doing this. I should be working on that, right? Oh, I need to be. And so really, really giving yourself permission to just turn off for a little while and just be still, really, as God's word encourages us. So if you're having trouble relaxing or just being, you might want to check your guilt meter and see if maybe, if that's working against you.
Is there such a thing? Can you buy a guilt meter like on Amazon? Can you buy that?
That's a good question. We should Google that and see. That would be a really cool product. If not, let's invent one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, listeners, we hope this is really helpful. I think, Liz, the two words that have stood out to me the most from what you've shared are
Mhm.
proportionate,
Mhm.
and the other P word is permission. Those
Mhm.
two words I think stood out to me that I don't know that I would have thought about them in this lane in the topic about guilt. So I appreciate those two words. We believe this is so helpful for you today. Certainly add comments as you've listened to this. If you've got questions that you're like, hey, this is prompting me to ask some other things, or is this a bad sign? Whatever. Send Liz or I an email. We'll put our information there so you know how to contact us in the office, and let's continue the conversation. We didn't touch on some other topics about this, so we're going to revisit those in some other episodes. We even brought up some new ones that we didn't know about, so we were just talking. So
Yeah.
we'll do those things and keep continuing this conversation of how we have balance in our bodies, our minds, and our spirits. So thanks for tuning in today, and we'll see you next Wednesday as we wrap up the New Year Balance series. Have a good afternoon.